Imagine a city completely gripped by fear for 3 solid months. There's an invisible attacker, shattering windows, even injuring a cop, who then just vanishes without a single trace. This is the truly baffling story of the Camden Phantom Sniper, a mystery that almost a century later remains completely unsolved. So let's go back in time. The year is 1927, and we're in Camden, New Jersey. You've got bustling streets, early cars, and this general post-war buzz. But nobody there has any idea that a wave of sheer terror is about to descend on their city. Something that would defy every single logical explanation. And then it starts. Seemingly out of thin air, glass just starts exploding. We're talking the windows of moving city buses, the windshields of parked cars, even the big storefront windows of local shops, they all just shatter. And as you can imagine, panic starts to spread like wildfire. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the mystery. Despite all this very real, very physical damage, the police could never find a cause. I mean, no bullets, no casings, not even a single thrown rock. Nothing. It was as if these attacks were being carried out by a ghost. Okay, so let's get into it. A phantom terror. The attacks begin. It all kicked off on Federal Street. The very first official report came from a city bus driver. He's just on his normal route, and suddenly, bam, the rear window of his bus just explodes. Glass goes flying everywhere, passengers are diving for cover, total chaos. The police, of course, arrive pretty quickly, and they do everything by the book. They meticulously search the bus, they comb the street, they check all the nearby buildings, looking for, a suspect or at least a projectile. But they find absolutely nothing. So they make an assumption. Must have been a kid with a rock, just a one-off act of vandalism. Oh, they had no idea this was just the beginning. And this is where things really ramp up. The attacks escalate, a city consumed by fear. What the police had written off as just a simple prank quickly spiraled into this terrifying, relentless pattern. The Phantom, as the newspapers were about to dub him, was just getting warmed up. And just look at how compressed this time frame is. The Phantom's entire reign of terror lasted only about 3 months. It kicks off in November of 1927, rages through that winter, and then in January 1928, it just stops. Gone. The sheer intensity packed into such a short time is a huge part of what makes this case so bizarre. And we're not talking about just a handful of incidents here. There were over 40 separate, confirmed attacks all across the city. Just think about that for a second. More than 40 times, glass shattered for no reason, cranking up the fear with every single report. The entire city was on edge, just waiting to see where this invisible attacker would strike next. But this was the turning point. This is when the Phantom went from being a public menace to a direct physical threat. An officer named Robert Mulligan was just walking his beat when he was hit by something with enough force to knock him completely off his feet. Doctors found a deep cut on his cheek, but you guessed it, no entry wound, no bullet. This was proof it wasn't just about breaking glass anymore. This was assault. All right, next up, hunting a ghost. A massive but fruitless investigation. With one of their own officers attacked, the Camden police force went all in. They mobilized a full-scale manhunt. The mission was crystal clear: catch the Phantom. The only problem? How in the world do you hunt for someone who leaves no evidence and is, for all intents and purposes, invisible? I mean, they threw everything they had at this. You had plainclothes detectives trying to blend into crowds at busy intersections, just scanning for anything weird. You had sharpshooters taking up positions on rooftops, hoping to get a bird's-eye view of the Phantom. And down on the streets, anyone who seemed even remotely out of place was brought in for questioning. It was a huge citywide operation. And you know what? It made absolutely no difference. Even with the city crawling with police officers and marksmen on the roofs, the Phantom just kept on going. Windows kept shattering, sometimes just a few blocks away from where the police were staked out. It created this feeling of an almost supernatural force, one that was just taunting them, able to strike whenever and wherever it wanted. And then a witness named Thomas Hagen added this chilling new layer to the whole mystery. Just seconds after a nearby window exploded, he heard the very clear sound of a man laughing, coming from a dark alley nearby. He sprinted toward the sound, but by the time he got there,
The alley was completely empty.
And this wasn't just a one-off report. Other witnesses started saying the same thing. This disembodied, echoing laugh that would follow the sound of shattering glass. It became the phantom's calling card, a human sound attached to this ghost-like presence that was always just out of sight, vanishing into thin air before anyone could get there. So after months of this frantic investigation and citywide panic, in January of 1928, just as suddenly and as inexplicably as it all began, it ended. No final attack, no note, no dramatic capture. Just silence. The phantom was gone, leaving a terrified city with zero answers and absolutely no closure. So the Camden police are desperate to close this case, right? So they issue an official statement. Their big theory? The whole thing was caused by sudden temperature changes. Yeah. They said the cold made the glass brittle and it just shattered on its own. But that explanation just falls apart, doesn't it? How does a temperature change knock a police officer to the ground? How does it laugh from an alley? And why would it suddenly stop happening everywhere, all at once?
With the official theories so obviously full of holes, the case of the Camden Phantom just sort of settled into the realm of legend. It became what it is today, a permanent mystery, a story that just defies every single attempt at a rational explanation.
A few years later, in 1931, a physicist from Princeton University actually reviewed the case files, and his professional conclusion was just damning for the police theory. He said that the specific patterns of damage were, and I'm quoting here, inconsistent with any known natural phenomenon. So here you have a scientist basically confirming just how strange these events really were. But here's the kicker. This expert report, the one that directly contradicted the official story and proved the public's fears were valid, was never released. It was simply filed away by the police, buried and forgotten. And then came the final, irreversible nail in the coffin for any hope of ever solving this. In 1962, a massive flood swept through Camden and completely destroyed the police archives. Every original file, every piece of evidence, every witness statement from the Phantom Sniper case, lost forever. So, in the absence of any real evidence, all we have left are theories. Some people believe it was a sniper testing some kind of experimental silent weapon, like a high-powered air rifle, or maybe even a sonic device. Others think it was just one incredibly clever person who figured out a method that left no trace. And of course, some wonder if it was something else entirely, a phenomenon that maybe even today we don't have the science to understand. Ultimately, we'll likely never know the truth. The story of the Camden Phantom is just frozen in time. A mysterious attacker, an impossible weapon, and a laughing ghost in a dark alley. The only question left is, what do you believe was haunting the streets of Camden?